Welcome to Horror Score Episode 9, Shocker.
Hi, welcome to Horror Score, Episode 9.
Shocker.
And we're your hosts, Jesse
and Vanessa.
And this is the second time we have filmed this episode because we had our first mishap where we filmed the entire episode in time-lapse. So now we know what an episode looks like in time-lapse when we're not saying anything, just vibrating around and moving really fast.
It's a good way to keep the review under 4 minutes, though.
Yeah, it was short. It was definitely a shorter one. We have picked Shocker. This was a classic that I loved as a kid, and it doesn't necessarily hold up as well as I remembered. Like, if you asked me as a child, like, name 5 really cool horror movie characters, I'd be like, oh, the Tall Man, Freddy, Jason, Shocker. Like, he probably would have made the cut. But he didn't get a sequel like all of those other characters did.
I, for one, am not shocked that he didn't get a sequel.
Mm. The movie does have some good points. Like there's good parts about it, but it wasn't as good as I remembered. But all of my points pretty much tie into the categories. Like, so if you want to just dive into scoring this movie right away, we can do that.
I would love to.
And as you can see, we own the movie. We got this box set, this Was Craven box set. Creative Nightmare on Elm Street. In this movie, there's a lot of similarities to Nightmare on Elm Street. So we're gonna poke at those along the way.
I'm just gonna throw out an animal abuse warning early, so you don't have to sit through the whole review to hear it. Yeah, it's there's a lot of dead cats, tortured cats, especially at the beginning when they find his holdout place, and it was really traumatic, and it took me like 10 minutes to get over. So,
side rant before we get into scoring. Shocker is unofficially tied into the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th universes. How do we know this? From the Friday the 13th video game. You can find these Tommy Jarvis tapes. They're hidden in like random drawers, like one out of every 100 games you play, one might spawn. And I found one or two while playing, and I found tape number 13. And it has Tommy Jarvis talking into a little tape recorder in a hospital, which was the Weston Psychiatric Institute in Springwood. Now, in his ravings, he's looking for people who survived, who believe in or have seen Jason, that he can help corroborate his story. One character, he talks about the police officer with a laser sight on his gun, Rick Cologne, from Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. We never really found out what happened to him. Well, on this Tommy tape, he goes on to say that he moved to Marysville, Ohio, changed his last name to his wife's maiden name, Pastori, and then was killed by this Horace Pinker character. Connected.
Yeah, Marysville, Ohio is a garbage place, so you know he was running. You know he was trying to get away from something.
Well, all right. Let's get to scoring this gem. This movie is scored on 5 categories. We can give it anywhere between 0 and 20 points per category for a grand total, an impossible grand total potential of 100. But no movie's probably ever going to get 100.
Sounds of the lands.
Well, let's start with our first category, story. Where are we at?
There was a story there, I'm sure. It was just very hard to pull apart and understand. The main thing that I got hung up on story-wise is this serial killer has killed 30-plus people, and the LAPD has not been able to catch him, which is bizarre. At one point, the police and the killer are in the same building, and then he runs away by the roof, and they're still not able to.
He jumps to another building, and they're like, he got away. He's gone. Yeah. Well, the story is sort of average, I thought. We have there's a serial killer, he dies, he comes back from the grave to continue his work, and he's just sort of evil for the sake of being evil. We don't get like a whole lot of exposition on why he's evil. He's He's just evil. But then we get some weird stuff at the end, and it kind of it takes in its own direction. I gave it a 10. What'd you give it?
I get a 9.
All right, practically on the same page. But let's talk more about the villain in our next category. Now, he's a weird villain. He's like supposed to be super evil, but they try to make him a little likable.
Did they?
Well, they tried to splash some humor into the movie. But he is the only electric body hopping ghost that I can think of throughout movie history. So he gets a couple of points there. So I gave him a 12. What about you?
I gave him an 11. Strictly, he kind of looks like a plumber I used to have. He just looks like an average guy, which was bizarre and I think kind of cool. But he had the best one-liners that I've ever heard from a villain. Ever in the movies that we've done so far.
Okay, all right.
So far, he has the best villain one-liners, such as finger licking good after he bites the fingers off of a guard.
All right.
It's great. So he got an 11.
I think with his little jumpsuit and his electric powers, he looks kind of neat. I don't think there's nearly enough Horace Pinker action figures out there.
Yeah, he was a TV repairman.
Yes.
And he looks like he is someone who would get the role of being a TV repairman.
Our next category
Horror.
is horror.
I'm a little disappointed, to be honest. There were so many off-scene deaths that were just like told to you. Like I'm guessing in the screenplay it was more powerful.
And they had to make some cuts later on.
Or no, I'm saying like because in like a story when you're writing it, you don't have to use practical effects to get the kill across. But then whenever they were making this, it just kind of felt flat and like stayed behind the scenes kills.
I think that if this movie came out today, it may very well be PG-13. I'd have to go back and like listen for any F-bombs maybe that happened, but this movie I believe there's no nudity, there's no sex scenes. I think it and a lot of the kills are off camera.
Which was surprising because Was Craven, I'm just like,
right?
He's gonna have so many horny teenagers running around in there.
Nope, just one teenager running around really, Jonathan Parker.
Yeah, giving out heart-shaped jewelry.
Now this guy loves football. His foster parents are killed. He goes on a police investigation where a couple other police officers are killed. The next day, he goes to football practice.
Yeah, and he never forgets to wear his varsity Letterman jacket in any scene.
So, I had to give this movie an 11 out of horror. There were about 11 or 12 deaths. I got 1 point for each death. It was lacking in some of the typical horror areas, but I gave it an 11.
It only gets a 9 from me because don't tell me that someone died. Okay.
In a horror movie, especially.
Don't you tell me that it happened. Just read the paper for that. Anyway.
All right. Well, we can move on to our next category, effects. When they had them, it bounces back and forth. I think from some things. I mean, it's old 80s, late 80s CGI. So some stuff looks kind of weird. But when they do practical effects, like the finger licking good scene you were talking about, I believe in that scene he also ripped someone's lip off. Yeah. And then there was that effect that you love.
My favorite part was somebody's fingers grow like 8 inches
as he's trying to get into the outlet.
Into the electrical socket.
Some sets were cool. His workshop in the opening scene to the movie is very...
That was such a tease because it was so great.
It's very Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 when when he's building the glove. Room, it's very, very similar. I did give it a 10. I would have given it higher, but that weird pair of static lips is so doesn't belong in the movie, I feel. You'll see if you watch it for yourself. I feel like there's several sequels that could have spawned off of this movie where they give you some tidbits of, there's something else going on here, but we don't get it. We never got it.
I gave it a 10 because this was my first time watching it, and so I was still able to get kind of excited whenever the first Alice Cooper songs came on and that sort of thing. So there were exciting moments for me having not seen this kind of classic horror film. How about S Factor?
All right, we got this S Factor. We borrowed this idea from
Doomsday Preppers.
Doomsday Preppers. Yes, they do the X Factor at the end where they're like, this person's got a good prep going. We scored them on these things, but they have a tank, so we're gonna give them 10 extra points. It's like
style points.
Yeah, anything can be nudity. It can be crazy camp, humor, star power, anything. For whatever reason we decide, we can throw some arbitrary points in here. Mine was kind of low, though. I think it was because I'd seen this a bunch of times as a kid, and there was like a 15-year gap, and I finally saw it again. And I was like...
What'd you give it?
I gave it a 6.
That's rough.
And all 6 of those points were for the drop kick that Jonathan Parker delivers on the roof to Horace Pinker. Bob Hawley would have been proud of that drop kick. Amazing drop kick. What'd you give it?
I gave it a 10 because of the great cameos. Come on, there was Timothy Leary was on it.
Heather Langdon Camp.
John Tesh.
I did not recognize him. I know the name, John Tesh Radio.
Ted Raimi had a great part, Pac-Man, in it. It was great to see another like horror director kill one of the Raimis. And then Wes Craven is in it himself at the end as a neighbor, which was neat. I like when directors put themselves in their movies.
So before we give you our final score, we're going to move to Vanessa's one-sentence synopsis.
So your one-sentence synopsis for Shocker is: local television repairman Horace Pinker thrives in his community after receiving shock treatment.
So there you have it. Shocker. Now, I scored it a grand total of 49 out of 100. And that is not an F. Again, I know we said this the past couple episodes. A 49. That is just 49 reasons to watch this movie.
I gave it a 49 too.
Twinsies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a combined score of 49. It's still a good score. We're saying this 49 reasons you should watch Shocker. I'm saying check it out. What do you think?
I mean, I probably won't watch it again.
Okay, I might. I'll probably watch it again. So, yeah, give us 10 minutes. We might save you 2 hours. So, that's all for now.
Stay spooky.